Okay. That's good, thank you. Councillor Oliver, you're first.
Thank you.
Other
Mr.
business.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any this evening.
Councillor Columbus.
Yes, I have a couple items here. The first one, I've tipped Lee Robinson off about this, and it's about the half-load season issue. And I know other councillors have had this similar call about whereby it's actually a municipal councillor that has to approve for someone to waive the bylaw for half-loads. Can you share that with us? Because I think we've all had calls, and I know of two instances. One was the Hidden Valley Campground a few weeks ago.
Through the chairman to council, as it currently stands, we do not have a consolidated bylaw for the half-load season. Half-load season exists from March 1st until April 30th, so it is now officially over for the 2017 year and will take effect again in 2018. The way all of the bylaws are written, staff do not have the ability to provide an exemption to the half-load season. The half-load is there to protect our roads during the spring thaw, because it typically freezes and thaws, the roads heave. Heavy trucks can do some significant damage to our roads, so these have been put in place. The majority of the bylaws that we currently have in place are from the former municipalities. Most of the bylaws are from the 70s and the 80s. And when we started reviewing them, we received many requests this year as a result of, I'm going to say, early frost removal from the ground. A lot of people were asking for exemptions to that. The way the bylaws are currently written, staff does not have the ability to provide that exemption. Council must provide that exemption. So I know that they said a municipal councillor must do that. I'm not sure where that misconception came on the street. It's actually council needs to approve that. Council will recall that a few weeks ago, I believe it was the beginning of April, we brought forward, or maybe the middle of April, we brought forward a request. There was a campground that had an order from the Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change, and they needed to do something because there was no frost in the ground at that time, and we did not want to prohibit the owners of that facility from being able to comply with a ministry order. Staff recommended that an exemption be granted, and council did that. And my understanding is that they were in fact able to bring in the tanks as required, and so they were very pleased with how that turned out. As a result of all of these requests, staff have added to the work plan a review, and we will be bringing forward in 2017 a revised bylaw revoking all of the previous bylaws. That bylaw is also going to authorize the General Manager of Public Works and Environmental Services to provide exemptions if necessary, so that when we have the cases where an exemption can certainly be given without damages to our roads, we do not need to bring that forward to council. Staff can certainly be able to do that. Many of the roads that have a half-load restriction on them have since been upgraded since that bylaw has been, the original bylaws have been passed and no longer need to have a half-load. So we will be reviewing all of the roads in Norfolk County that should have a half-load, and we'll only be including those roads in our new proposed bylaw. So before the start of the 2018 half-load season, staff will have a new bylaw brought forward for council's consideration so that we can implement a consolidated bylaw that more accurately reflects the current condition of our roads.
Okay, thank you for that. Clarifies it. The next one is with respect to the Dover Wharf project, and there's been some people asking where that's at, and perhaps Councillor Wells maybe knows more about it. As to construction period and that type of thing.
Mayor Luke.
It's my understanding, and I know Chris Barrett is not here,
Mike,
but
can you turn your mic off?
It's my understanding, Mr. Chair, that the green light is on for that project right now. If you look at the site, and I know Councillor Wells has, I did last night again. I was there Friday and again right along the edge of the site last night, and a large backhoe / pile driver is in with a lot of heavy corrugated sheet metal. Looks like they're going to do or redo or parts of the entire waterway there, It has certainly been backfilled, and it's been cleaned up very nice. So I am optimistic we're going to see something, although I have nothing from the developers as to exactly where it is. But if Councillor Columbus would like, I could contact the building department tomorrow and send out an email to councillors. Pretty significant development, if that's okay.
I just thought thought that it was going to progress a little quicker, is what I thought. So. And my last one is just to mention that the Ag Business Tour is scheduled for September the 6th. It's a Wednesday, if you want to make a note in your books. So September 6th. And it will cover the east end of the county. Councillor Sonnenberg's area and Wells. Talbot Gardens. Okay.
Mayor Luke.
Mr. Chair, I have 7 items. Now, if we get over the moaning, maybe I can get through them a little quicker. We did not have other business last week on the 26th. We did not have other business. I think we had just a couple little items on the 19th, so I apologize, but these are things that I would like to chat quickly about. I did raise 2 weeks ago the letter I received from Rosalie Studio, i.e. the owners Karen and Daryl Granger, whom I met. And I was told back on the 19th, under other business, I was told that our senior staff the next day would chat about that, the fact that council did pass a one-way street partway going eastbound. And I have not been able to find out if there was a discussion or whether that's something that will come back. I just wanted to follow up with that so I could get back to Mr. Granger. So if somebody from staff has anything to add or give me some information, thank you.
Lee?
Through the chairman to council, with respect to that, although I was away when that was brought forward at council, it's my understanding that it has not come back to SLT yet. Public Works staff are currently working on a memo, so SLT has all of the appropriate information to discuss that. I understand from staff that it was to be brought forward to next week, so that would be May 10th SLT for discussion at that meeting. The way the bylaw that council passed currently reads is that it does not become in full in effect until it is posted. Staff have been directed to not post it until we have some information to be able to bring back to council for council to make a decision. So that one way will not be in effect until the matter has come back to council to discuss it further.
Mr. Chairman, it is posted. The
signs?
The
Okay.
one-way signs are posted.
Okay, I will speak with staff. They were not supposed to post those signs, so I will have them removed.
Thank you, and that's very good news, and I will pass that on. That's one down. I'll go quickly.
That's okay, take your time.
Well, we have a 9 o'clock curfew, and we'll get there. I also received recently, and Lee, you've been very good in responding to me, but this is an email from Cindy Dell, who emailed me yesterday and also again today. As you know, council initially talked about putting in a 3-way stop at the intersection of Tisdale and Prospect Street in Port Dover. And then we knew that road construction was going to happen with the Main Street and Prospect last year, so we then decided not to put these stop signs in. And Cindy has given me indication that she felt that once the construction was done, we were going to then consider putting the signs in. And Lee Robinson has clarified that, and I do recall that we did not say we were going to put them back in afterwards. And I guess I want to respond to Cindy. Is there any indication from council that we want to relook at that intersection or not? Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Put it back in her shoulders. Very quickly, yesterday was Monday, Sunday afternoon. Councillor Sonnenberg and I had the honor to attend. Are you going to talk about this, or do you want? Then I'm going to be quiet. There, I'll move on. Nice job, by the way. Mr. Sonnenberg will mention that. Main Street construction, Port Dover. Two issues here. A week ago Thursday, I was down in Port Dover and was quite surprised that the main business section of Port Dover that was completed last year was not able to be accessed from the north end, i.e. Chapman Street. Yeah, I think I got the right one. Yes, Chapman Street. So when I did get a hold of Lee Robinson over here, she sort of was not aware that that was the situation. It certainly was never discussed at council. A number of merchants in Port Dover have called me, and certainly the Board of Trade, quite surprised. I have to say that I have relayed back to them, Lee, your information that there's quite a bit of connecting to do at that intersection. It will remain closed until probably around the 2nd or 4th of June, I believe, was what the merchants told me today when I was down there, that Jeff had notified them, or you, Lee. Appreciate that. It will be open for the turns during weekends and the evenings. So that's a start. So the question to me was, well, if you guys didn't know about this, like, shouldn't you know in the future? I said, I think we just accepted the tender, the lowest tender. We were pleased with it. I don't think anybody, including myself, ever realized that intersection. So the question I have, Mr. Chair, and I don't even know who to address it to, I was told today that if anybody enters and goes and parks or turns around, in other words, where the light is by the Lighthouse Theater coming northbound, there's a detour, but you can drive, and many cars are parked as they were today. Will those people driving up there, will they be fined or not? And my thoughts are, well, why would they? If they can get up there and turn around and come out and not go into the construction area, why wouldn't they? I don't know if anybody on staff can answer that. They seem to have, the merchants I talked to today, the understanding that if somebody goes up there and parks or turns around, the police could fine them.
Lee, go ahead.
Through the chairman to council, with respect to that, it is open to local traffic only, past the detour but before the construction site. So there is a space in between where the detour starts and where the construction fencing, et cetera, is to block that off. That is open to local traffic only.
Thank
so
you.
Should somebody wish to go down there and do that sort of stuff, it's most certainly open for that. But from a detour point of view, we can't send people down in that direction.
Thank you, and that's what I thought too, local traffic. Doesn't really say on the sign I looked at today, open to local traffic. It's detour, but I got it. I will pass that on. 3 to go. I'm getting there. Thank you for your patience. I apologize. In your information package this evening, you don't have to turn to it, but just be aware, that on page 7 there is a memo from, I believe, Bob Fields on access to the beach at the Waterford Treatment Plant, some new equipment to come in to temporary take over while other equipment is commissioned or repaired, that the access for people, the public to drive down there will definitely be disrupted, and at times maybe pedestrians will not be allowed down there depending on the nature of the work, and this will take place for the next little while. I'm not going to pull out, but I did read the memo. So I just want to make council assured that if we get complaints, that this is something that we haven't determined yet, the level of public accessibility. Lee, I see the finger come up again, and Mr. Chair, certainly anything to add to that or correct me, I'm all ears.
Go ahead, Lee.
Through the chairman to council, the purpose of this memo was to advise that the current access to the beach will be interrupted on a intermittent and different kind of basis, meaning that some days nobody will be able to access it all because we will have construction equipment there that will turn it into a construction site. We cannot permit members of the public to access it. Other times, pedestrian access will be maintained because we'll be able to do so. And in addition, that parking may be affected as well, and parking is probably the one that may be affected the most throughout this. We'll be able to maintain pedestrian access for most of the time, but the parking may be limited at the time. So the purpose is, this is not a decision that's been made on a permanent, ongoing basis. This is just a result of the work that we have to do there, that access will be limited and restricted at various times throughout the course of the project.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for that. And just two to go. On your desk this evening, I placed a memo from Gary Houghton, our engineer, that he sent to me in my request to him back on April the 12th, excuse me, about the status of Meisner Dam. And as you can see, he has given me an update, some of which I do understand, some I do not understand. I think, Mr. Chair, what I'm looking for from Lee Robinson, if she could answer this, I'm really hoping, and I'm a very optimistic person and probably overly so, I'm really hoping we do not see 2017 go by and we're sitting here next spring saying, why is the dam not being repaired? And I know what some of this refers to. I'm certainly familiar with some of the completed stuff. And I don't want to jump to a conclusion in saying we're being held up by approval for a permit to repair or start construction by M&R. I hope that that's not true, because I felt that way 3 years ago when I first visited M&R. And yet I wonder if Lee can give us a comment as to any type of realistic date that we can see this dam finally be repaired, as we set out, I think, back in 2011 to accomplish.
Through the chairman to council, with respect to that, the information that Mr. Houghton has provided you with is accurate. It's in keeping with the schedule that the consultant had provided, and we're fully expecting that in late September we will have an award report here to council with a recommendation for award for a contractor for the work. We are not being held up. The process is moving along quite smoothly, actually, with respect to this, and we're fully expecting that we will have the award for the contractor here in September.
And if I may, and I apologize for taking some time here, but this is kind of important. Award for the contract, is that, in other words, I interpreted that to say that a contractor will be selected in September or in the fall to start work
That is correct.
in 2017.
That is correct.
Thank you. I'm not being smart, Alec. I just... okay. Well, Lee, thank you so much for that. I did have a meeting yesterday. Sorry. Why is today Tuesday when it should be Monday? I did meet with Mr. Barrett, Toby Barrett, and he said if you feel that at any time you're being stalled, this council and myself could certainly supply him with a letter so that we could, he would personally take it to the minister in charge, Catherine McGarry, and see if he could assist us in moving this along. But from what I'm hearing, we don't need that assistance, and we're on the home stretch. We're on the home stretch. You know that record that used to skip all the time? Round and round, on the home stretch, yeah, well, that's what I feel like. Thank you, Lee. The last one, Mr. Chair, and hold your applause. I'm sorry. I'm almost done. These things get backlogged. And Mr. Chair, someone could rule me out of order here, and I won't feel embarrassed, and I won't be upset. I want to talk just very quickly about the Talbot Gardens Arena. And I'm not looking for council to overturn a previous motion that we are going to only have it used as a practice pad, so to speak. In other words, restrict that. I get that. I supported that, and so I'm not going there. But I did have a conversation with Mr. Cridland, and I felt personally that when I asked him, how long do you think, in reality, we would see new ice surface or surfaces if it was in the form of a community recreation hub? I was thinking 3 years. Mr. Cridland told me, in his opinion, it would be minimum of 4, maybe 5 years. Ouch. He's probably right. There's a lot of planning, there's a lot of ifs in that scenario. So based on that, I I did take it upon myself to call the engineer from CSE who provided us with the report. He's just a delightful person to talk to. His name is George Carvajal. I think I pronounced that right. And I had some questions for him. And the reason I want to just take 2 minutes to talk about this is my first question was, when I looked, and I apologize you don't have your report in front of you, but my first question was, the two ends of the arena, the east and the west end where 1/3 of the seating area isn't there because of the Zamboni, and the other end where the players come out to the east, those areas are not rated or shaded as being safe, unsafe, or even worse. Is there any chance, very minimum, I said to George, that we could put a chain link fence from the ice surface right up to the outside wall on both sides to allow seating at least down below the lounge area in those seats? And there's 2 walkways on both sides. My guess is there's probably seating for 150 there. And he said, that's a good thought. And he said, I'm not sure if I remember what it was like under there. Did we have to cut holes to go under there? Like I wasn't there, I don't know. He said you should look into it. It seems to me, Mr. Chair, that dressing rooms or meeting rooms or referee rooms are under the end, and it's a little bit different under there than it is in the sealed areas. And he said maybe that section should be looked at quickly, and maybe even some just temporary shoring would allow that, or maybe it's fine the way it is. I haven't been under there, back in there for a while. Okay, you might want to comment. That was my first question. I want to just read a couple of comments. And I went on and had some conversations with him. He said the main problem, other than the deteriorating concrete, is this 4.5-inch cement slab was put on top of the original seating area. He asked me if I knew that was put on by the contractor back in 1991. I said, I don't know. He said that has caused so much stress. It would be a huge difference if that was removed and taken off on the weight load of all that cement. He told me, if I may, that this arena was designed like, he said something like beyond even good, beyond even excellent. Whoever designed this arena designed it very well. It is designed to hold far, far, far more than what it's even rated for, which is 100 PSI weight load. And of course, he's suggesting right now it should be reduced to 40, and we've suggested how do you monitor. So we've closed it, which he agrees with. But he said it's a higher load than you can ever imagine, the way this thing is designed. And as you know, the diagram in there we went over with the cement slab sitting on the L ledges. He said this is far superior than to some of the designs today to meet the minimum requirements. And finally, he said, Charlie, I would suggest that you do a little more work investigating this 4-inch slab. He called it a 4 and a 4.5-inch topping. It could be removed and would maybe open up quite a bit of the seating to a satisfactory level. I asked him, Mr. Brunton, I'll give you credit for this, to talk about unshrinkable concrete, cutting holes on the areas, the sections that need to be done, filling it with as much gravel as possible, and then topping it up with unshrinkable cement. Would that be sufficient? His response was this: that is included as his least expensive option of the 3 options, the one for roughly $700,000 to $740,000. That would be a very good way to fix that problem. I asked him if doing that would in any way, I remember the word now, to move gravel up the conveyor and feed it down. It's a sling. I couldn't think of that word. he said if you use the sling, it would not do any damage to the arena floor or the pipes. As we know, that's scheduled next year, I think, to be replaced. I think, Mr. Chair, just to conclude this, I think it would be an embarrassment to this county to think we're going to operate that arena, and we can do it, but I think it'd be somewhat of an embarrassment to operate that for the next 4 or 5 years or beyond with only, welcome to Norfolk County, oh, by the way, we continue year after year after year, have something that's broken and don't fix it. I think it would be an embarrassment, and I think that this county should, along with, or this council, should do some thinking in the next little while about having another look. Maybe the place to start is somebody, Mr. Chairman, you or somebody here mentioned, maybe even a tour of staff and council. It might have been you. I can't, I'm sorry, it was somebody around this table. No, okay. So, Mr. Chair, that's all I have for other business, but I know because of that evening of 3 hours of deputation, we didn't really have much of a chance to discuss Talbot Gardens, other than we certainly, and I thank council for this, supporting. We don't want, bad enough to have a spectator arena, another one, or a non-spectator, but it'd be worse to have spectators that are there when something collapsed. So I really urge this council to think about just having another look at our options. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for putting up with my lengthy other business. I apologize.
Councillor Black, to do with the arena?
And Mr. Chairman, I really have to thank Charlie, Mayor Luke, for bringing this forward. I really do, because I think you're absolutely right that we should have another look at that, and knowing that the length of time that it may take to get someplace else, like what do you do in the interim? And, I skate over there every Friday, and I went into the section, the east section. I went down into the area where it's like a janitor's room, and you get the skating buddies and pick them up for the little kids. So you can clearly see the concrete there, and it's dry, it's painted, but there is some broken out, and you can see some exposed rebar. And you can see what would happen if it wasn't heated. Because if it's not heated, that moisture gets into those cracks, and then when it gets into the crack, it expands, and then bang, that's where we saw those pictures and all of that concrete. So those areas in the east end are heated. And I think you're right that probably there might be an opportunity to at least seat some people safely in those areas. So I would certainly support you in having staff and even maybe all of council going over there and having a good look and touring around there. So thanks for that.
Councillor Brunton, to do with the arena?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm glad Mayor Luke brought this forward. I frequent that building quite often, and I'm not convinced that we dealt with it properly. I like the idea of a tour with council. I think I took Councillor Height in there one day before we dealt with the report. I would like to, if possible, bring that engineer in here, right to this council chamber, and maybe we could ask some questions and go over it. But I said at the time, that building is probably, I wouldn't know if $8 million would replace it. So I, for the life of me, don't see us tearing it down. The community hub is a whole different issue, but I've had experience with non-shrink fill in my day of working, and to me, I don't even know. He keeps talking about gravel, then non-shrink fill. I really question whether we need the gravel, whether we can just pump it in, like it's certainly an easy way of doing the project. But I do know the man that worked for United 8 that was involved in the construction back in the 90s. I did speak with him not that long ago, and he said the same thing, that is a very well-constructed facility. No question about it. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd love to see us bring that engineer and have a little chat with him, because I certainly don't want to sit here for 4 or 5 years looking at that facility. Thank you.
Luke?
Just in response, two things. Number one, I'm not seeing any objections or hearing any that. I talked to Mr. Cridlin tomorrow, to arrange for the engineer to come back, and then from that point, we can determine who wants to go for a tour and maybe talk about this a little more. Mr. Chair, just to respond to Councillor Brunton's question, I asked about filling it up entirely with cement. He said the cost would be just outrageous, that the gravel works just as good. It's a lot cheaper, and it'll go in there real quick. And he said, then top her up with the cement. The weight of the cement will compact the gravel.
Okay, Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I got a couple things here. Recently received a call from a constituent of mine looking to get some development work done. They were told by planning that the site plan stuff was taking 4 to 5 months to get complete. That pretty much will close off a lot of work that gets done in summertime. I see Mr. Barrett isn't here today, so I'll wait for a response on that one. Next up, I'm seeing a lot of work done with graders on the sides of our roads in Norfolk County. I've seen the grader go by at least 2 times so far, and I imagine the 3rd time they'll be dumping the gravel on that they just brushed off. And I'm wondering if Public Works could speak to that whole process and if this is done on an annual basis. And what is the reason for polishing the gravel sides of our roads?
Lee?
Through the chairman to council, I'm not sure exactly which activity that you're referring to with the graders. The graders are used on the gravel roads, and in addition, we are significantly behind in our shouldering operations. So we also need to top up all of our shoulders and grade that material out. The shoulders are what holds the sides of the roads in place so that we don't have the premature breakup on the edges where we don't have curbs. I'm not sure which operation you're referring to. And I believe that there's also one area in your ward, and perhaps this is the same area, where we've been training some of our operators with the graders. So some work is being done in the same area multiple times. Not that the work actually needs to be done, but it's a training exercise, not a road exercise. So I'm not sure exactly which one you're referring to. If you have specific details, I'd be happy to look into and get back to you.
Well, specifically, I'm guessing it's the shoulder operations, because what I noticed before is all winter long, the snow plows go and they clean off the shoulders of the road, which in the spring we go back and we dump gravel back onto them. And then we blow it all back onto everybody's lawns, and we as council get those phone calls. I know I do in my ward. And I'm wondering, like this spring when I drove around, I didn't see that our shoulders were beat up or damaged. They look pretty good after the snow plows graded them nicely for us. I'm wondering if what that cost would be, and if we couldn't do it every other year.
Through the chairman to council, our shouldering is actually behind where it should be, and we have in some areas, some significant premature deterioration of our asphalt as a result of the shoulders. So I can look into it. I will look into it further for you, but it is actually something that should be done on a yearly basis to ensure that the asphalt that we are placing stays as long as possible.
Lee, it almost looks like it's some type of a disc that actually goes along the outside edge of the grass and cuts that open. So that's almost what it looks like. So like they're bringing it up from the shoulder and putting it. It looks like you're putting the grass over where close to the road in some cases.
I'll have a look into it, and I'll send out an email to all of council to report back with respect to that.
Okay, one of the reasons why I'm bringing this up is because if we were to be able to postpone this project, say, every other year, that might free up some cash for bicycle lanes down the sides of the road, in which case they wouldn't need to be graded each and every year either, and we would get some more bicycle lanes. I know that's been a pressing issue with some of the constituents around. So that would be good. Next on my list, I'm not sure how to go about doing this, Mr. Chair. I'm going to need a name change for one of the parts in my ward. I guess Long Point, I guess we're going to call it Sign Point from now on. Okay, like honestly, we redo the road on Erie Boulevard, comes out really nice, looks decent, people are happy, then we inundate it with signs. Like literally, it's visual pollution. We're the laughing stock right now over these signs. They're everywhere. Everywhere. More than there are ducks and geese in Long Point right now. We have signs. Now, I've asked a few times to have this looked at, because I know the province has some goofy regulations about how many signs, but literally, some of them got to come out of here. And either that or we're going to change the name. Something has to give. I can't take it anymore. The call, it's embarrassing.
Are these traffic,
Right?
traffic signs or
Every
advertising?
sign you can think of except fun is here signs, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Lee,
Through the chairman to council, that matter has been brought up to us. We have asked the engineer who did the design to review their design and confirm for us that every one of the signs is required by regulations, and if it is not, to advise which signs we can remove to ensure that we are in compliance with the regulations. And my understanding is that we were to have that by the end of May, back from the consultant.
Okay, so people might be able to see stuff around the signs if we got rid of some? I'd appreciate that.
Staff are hopeful that we can remove some of the signs, but we are looking for confirmation from the experts who did that to ensure that we don't do something to put us in a precarious legal situation.
Okay, thank you for that. I think it was last week or maybe the week before, we had an OMB hearings update, and my phone's ringing off the hook about the Hastings OMB appeal that's going on right now, and a lot of people that have been calling me are asking me, since they spoke about it, how do they get updates and are they able to talk at the OMB hearing?
who's got the information on that? David?
Sorry, I'm a fill-in. That's really a pure planning question, and I don't have enough background to give you a proper answer. But depending on how we got to the point we're at today, if individuals were delegates to council prior to it making decisions that got us to this point, then typically under the Act, they'd have right to stand or to appear at an OMB appeal. I hope that answers the question. Really, we need planners who are here, or had I been here, I think I could give a more fulsome answer. But
No problem, Mr. Cribbs. I'll wait for an answer on that. There was probably, I don't know how many deputations we had, 30 come forward on this topic, and I'm pretty sure all of them have called me at this point, and not one of them has received an update other than what we have here in the council.
Councilor
So-
Brunton, you want to talk about this?
Me, Mr. Chairman, and Councillor Height brought it up, but I was on our information package on April 25th. That was one of the issues I was going to ask myself, and I might as well ask it now if I may. It's to deal
Go
with
ahead.
the zoning and the issues that Mr. Height, or Councillor Heights brought forward. But I read that memo from Mary Elder and Shannon Van Dalen, and when I see the hearing is scheduled like a pre-conference hearing, I guess, for June 26th. It's a Monday. But my concern is, as you all know, the summer season's fast approaching, and we went through that issue last year with trailers on the Hastings and tents and docks, piers, wharfs, whatever. And I'm just wondering what happens at that pre-conference hearing. I guess my big question is, we all seem to think that the 1985 bylaw by Norfolk Township is still in effect. I think that's what were led to understand from the planning staff. And I'm just wondering how our planning staff is going to deal with this pre-conference hearing. And I know there's nobody here today, but I'm wondering if we can perhaps maybe on the 18th of May, when we deal with the official plan, perhaps ask a couple of questions on this issue. I don't know if that's in line or not.
Mayor Luke may have some information.
I don't have a lot to ask. Certainly, I was under other business going to bring up. I kept it from 2 weeks ago.
All right.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. I didn't want to go too far with my, with your patience, folks. But certainly, when I was meeting with Mr. Cribbs and our solicitor last Thursday, Friday morning, this was brought up, and certainly June 26th is the pre-hearing. And very clearly, Mr. Tice relayed to us that indeed the former township of Norfolk's bylaw, I believe it's one N085, I believe, there was four of them, I get them mixed, yeah, one N85, N085, is definitely still in effect on Hastings Drive until all of the outstanding, and I know there's two, there's four outstanding OMB issues that are outlined here to be dealt with. Once these two are cleared up, then of course 1Z 2014 will kick in. That's about all I can tell you, Councillor Brunton. Thank you.
Well,
Go ahead.
if I may, Mr. Chairman, would it be in order could we get some clarification from planning staff on the 18th? I don't know, are we in here next week with planning staff?
Planning staff will be here next week. Yes, it's council. I'm assuming that they will be here.
Will they be here next Monday or Tuesday?
Normally, at a council meeting, there's a public hearing application. Certainly, Chris Barrett will be back tomorrow. But I will ask that we get an update on this
All right,
for next week, okay?
that'd be great.
Thank you, sir.
David, you want to add something?
Well, if it would please this council, we could add that as an item for the in-camera discussion. You don't want to hear what will amount to our legal position. Granted, I wasn't here prior, but I can't imagine we want to air that publicly at this point prior to the hearing. So if that would so please council, we could add for receipt of legal advice and position from our external solicitor. We did discuss it in a private meeting, so I mean, I have some vague understanding of that. We could either invite the solicitor to directly give us opinion, or we can provide that vicariously, if that so pleases this council.
Well, again, you know, the dilemma we got into last summer with this whole issue. I would like to get some clarification how they're going to approach this, that's for sure. Leave it at that. I don't care how we do it or when. I think the sooner the better. Okay?
Okay, we'll set it up. Councillor Sonnenberg.
Wait.
Sorry.
My list isn't done yet,
Oh, you're
Mr.
not
Chair.
done yet, okay. I thought
Okay.
you were done, sorry.
I've been in to see some of the businesses in my ward, of course, and when I do, I go and I ask them how business is going, and it's been going really well down there. So then I pitch them if they're looking to expand, things like that, and some of them think about it, and then I talk about this wonderful community improvement program that council has put forward. And so they've contacted the staff, they meet with the staff. Then when I walk back into the store, they tell me there's no money. There's no money until June for any of the community improvement programs that this council approved, what, $95,000 worth in our last budget? So I'm wondering what's going on. It's tap empty. I know last year there was a problem. We didn't have the $100K in the budget and spent it anyway. And more. And now what? There's no loot available?
Well, again, I don't think we have the people here to be able to answer that, so.
Okay, so
We-
another...
Mayor
this-
Luke?
No, we don't, but let's get a response to council.
Yes?
I do know that, I think it was 95, 90 or 90, I was thinking 99, let's say 95, was approved. So I think we have the money, but I don't know whether there's a holdup with the applications or something. I don't know. Let's find out.
Yeah. All I've heard is that they're not cutting checks until June 1st. So, and that's kind of late for your summertime work. A lot of these people have been spent months planning for it and thought they'd take advantage of that. Okay, so then,
I see somebody writing down, so hopefully we'll get some, either an email or something to tell
Yep.
us why and when.
sounds good.
Thank you.
The last one on my list, Mr. Chair, it's been on my list numerous times. It's going on a couple years now, and I know that Finance was threatening to bring it before the end of April. That would be the reserve fund report. Mr. Ford had promised, I use that word, to bring that before he left. Now he's gone. And now we still don't have a reserve fund report. I know Councillor Black highlighted that they're empty. We don't know how empty the bucket is. Over 2 years we've sat around here. We have no report. Maybe our new treasurer can tell us the update on that.
Want to answer that?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I can answer that. Excuse me. The report has been worked on. There has been numerous meetings with the previous treasurer and with Kathy LaPlante and the staff involved with the reserves. I would say we're about 70% there. I don't want to make excuses for the previous 2 years, but the previous 2 years has been very taxing on the finance department for a number of reasons. And we are finally at a stage now where we got full staff complement where we can actually get some of these time-consuming reports done. And so this reserve report will be done, I would say, by the end of May, early June.
Okay, thank you for that. It kind of scares me that this is a time-consuming report when it's our savings account, but I hope that 70% of it got completed in 2 years. I hope the 30% doesn't take another year. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hey, Councillor Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was my privilege this past Sunday to attend an event at the Waterford Heritage and Agricultural Museum, where we inducted 2 more prominent Norfolk County farmers into the Norfolk County Agricultural Hall of Fame. They were Mr. Ron Judd and David McLaren, both outstanding individuals in agriculture. This, of course, was all orchestrated by Melissa Culver and her staff, and my commendations to you, Melissa, and for the job well done. Diane Finley was there, Toby Barrett was there, Mayor Charlie Luke presented citation on behalf of Norfolk County. I've always thought this was a great exercise. This is the 3rd year we've done this. We've inducted two people per year. This is the 3rd year. You know, everybody has a Hall of Fame. Every sport, every music genre, every yo-yo going down the road belongs to some Hall of Fame. And here we have agriculture in this area is so prominent, and it's a good thing that we do now recognize prominent people in agriculture. And it's just, it's time, and it's very appropriate, and once again, my commendations to Melissa Culver and her staff for a job well done, and we hope to see this continue. I'm sure it will. Thank you very much.
Councillor Wells.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'd like to suggest from now on that we start with other business and then get to the agenda. And it doesn't take long for other business to back up, and it's a very important role that we have. It's an opportunity for we as councillors to get the message out and to seek guidance from staff. And I don't think any of us should ever make an apology for having business, because what we are doing is bringing forth the people business. I have an announcement, Mr. Chair, and spring has arrived, and the grass is growing. Unfortunately, the grass isn't growing in certain areas in my ward, and I'm getting calls about that, and it has to do with construction.